everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we're talking about The Matrix Revolutions. Released in 2003, directed by the Wachowskis, and starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne, and Hugo Weaving. And Jada Pinkett Smith. Forgot about her. This was the final chapter of the original Matrix trilogy. It was, the final Matrix movie up until just a few years ago. So I saw this in the theater. I liked it when I saw it in the theater. I didn't think it was, I think my initial reaction, it's hard to remember, it's been 20 years, but I think my initial reaction was that I liked it, but not as much as Reloaded. But it was the first movie that I drove out to the Mall of Georgia to see on an IMAX. Even though they didn't shoot it in IMAX or anything, it was just, I guess that's when I don't know, maybe I discovered that IMAX and said, let's go see it. And so I remember driving out there. I think John came with me and one other friend, and we drove out there and we saw Matrix Revolutions on the biggest screen we could find. And I remember really enjoying that. I'm guessing you didn't see this in the theater?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But what was did you loved it when you first saw it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody knows by now. I am a Matrix nerd. I love these movies. I haven't seen any of them in the theaters, with the exception of Resurrection. No, actually, I didn't even see Resurrection in the theaters. I saw Resurrections on HBO Max, so I haven't seen any of them in theaters. Wow, that's crazy.
Wow, yeah.
Well, I take that back. They re-released The Matrix recently this past year, and I did see that, which was
it was a
great
great
experience.
You didn't see it in its initial run, but you got to see it,
right?
Yeah. So that's cool,
right? Because I was 9 when the first movie came out, and I was 13 when Reloaded
and this one came out.
Yeah, and Revolutions came out. But yeah, I've always loved all three of these movies. This is the one that I enjoy the least, but it's still, in my opinion, a very good movie. I completely understand why people don't like it, because there are some questions that seem to be unanswered, but I think those questions, there are one or two that aren't really answered, but I think those questions are can be answered if you watch the entirety of the trilogy, like in retrospect. No, because I've said several times that these movies, especially the first two, they require multiple watches because they are so dense with information and lore and ideas and philosophy. It's a lot going on in this trilogy, which is why I love it so much, because every time I watch the first movie and the second movie, I learn something new every time. And with this movie, this isn't really a movie that you watch to learn new things. This is supposed to be the last of the trilogy, so it's supposed to tie up loose ends, which it does for the most part. But the thing that I love about this movie is that once you get through the first act, which is to me the weakest part of the movie, once you get through that, it is an all-out war film from start to finish, and I love that about this movie. That, like, you finally see the war that the first two movies and the Animatrix were building up to. You finally see this final confrontation between man and machine, and it's just from a straight spectacle standpoint, it does not disappoint. This is still one of the, like, visually, it's still one of the best movies of its kind.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you about in terms of liking it the least, but I don't hate it or anything. I remember reading an interview or something with Quentin Tarantino, and he talked about how the first Matrix would be like on his list of greatest movies ever made if the sequels had never happened. Like, the sequels in his brain ruined the first movie, and that's not the case for me. I don't think that these sequels ruined the first film. I do think the first film is definitely the strongest. I think the second film is stronger than this film, but I don't hate this film by any means. I remember watching it. I had not watched this movie in at least 7 years, because I remember the last time I watched this movie was when I was living in California, and my wife had said at the time that she thought this was better than Reloaded, and I was like, well, I'm going to watch it and see what I think. And I really had a hard time getting through it that last viewing. I didn't have that feeling this time, watching it yesterday. I kind of expected myself to check out at a certain point, and I didn't really. So I think I enjoyed it a little bit more this time around. It is visually pretty spectacular. I found myself, now that I'm a little older, not loving, like, I think I really liked the like mech suits when I was younger, and I don't totally love those anymore. And I don't know if that's just because other movies have kind of done that too, and so I don't know if this was like, that was kind of one of the first times I'd seen it, and now I've just seen, like, I'm thinking of like Avatar. You remember that big fight scene at the end of the first Avatar where he's like, he's kind of in that big mech suit type thing. And I feel like there's other movies that have done it, but it's still a pretty amazing scene with all the Sentinels and everything. Although I do think with the amount of Sentinels that come into the dock, I feel like they would have wiped him out. There's like hundreds of thousands of Sentinels, and they're all clustered together and flying around and stuff. But and visually, like I said, it's very cool. But I just think that many Sentinels would have just wiped out those people really fast. But maybe not.
Yeah, I never really thought about that. I mean, I just thought that they were, you know, they had been building up to this, you know, they had been preparing for this for who knows how long. So they, you know, they were, you know, pretty well prepared. And, you know, when the Sentinels start, you know, coming in on them, you know, they're raining fire on them from start to finish. That never really bothered me. The only thing that really kind of bothers me about this movie is just how slow the beginning is, and like coming off the end of Reloaded, which I know a lot of people don't love, which I get, because it's anticlimactic, because it pretty much ends on a conversation. And, you know, the very last thing we see is, you know, Neo saving Trinity, but the third act is pretty much just a conversation. And so I can understand why people don't like that. And this kind of continues that. But the thing about it is, you know, like I said, we've been building up to this war. And personally, for me, I would have wanted to see, I would have wanted the almost the entirety of the third movie to be the battle. Like I said, we get a lot in that second and third act, specifically the second act. The second act is all the battle at the dock, Neo and Trinity going to the Machine City, and Niobe driving the hell out of the Logos
Right.
Through the pipelines to come back to the dock. But yeah, the first act is a little bit slower for my liking for a third movie. But I understand that it had to be like that, because we had to, you know, we had to find out where Neo was and get back to Neo, and that whole scene in the train station with those two programs, and they're having that conversation about love, which is a scene that I like. It's just to have that as the scene at the beginning of a movie like this, it like you're ready for your adrenaline to be pumping, and this is not what that is. This scene feels like it should be in the previous movie, but I understand why it wasn't in there. That the second movie had a lot going on. Despite it being very conversational, being a very wordy movie, there's a lot going on in Matrix Reloaded. So I understand why they had to push that to the third movie, because the second movie would have been overbloated. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah. And like you said already, they ended, I've never really had that complaint about Reloaded, that it ends on a conversation. Like, I guess that never has bothered me. But I think, you know, you're right. Aside from him stopping the Sentinels, there's some dialogue, heavy stuff towards the end of Reloaded. And then, and if they had added the train station scene to the end of Reloaded, it would have been even like a slower ending. Wouldn't have. I love the way Reloaded ended, though, with Neo being in like kind of a coma, and they pan over and show Bane, and that's how it ends. I love that ending. But
Yeah, I do too.
you're right. It didn't feel too long to me, but now that you're talking about it, the train station scene does seem to kind of go on for a while. And I don't totally understand it either, because, the train station is in between our worlds. It's in between the Matrix and the real world. And I tried to put that into like real terms. And the only thing I could come up with, and maybe this is a bad analogy, is like they're on a flash drive and the flash drive is not plugged into a USB port at the moment. That's the only thing I could think of that kind of would be visualizing where they are exactly. The scene that I don't like in the beginning is the fight scene between Trinity, Morpheus, what's the guy who's like the Oracle's bodyguard? Seraph. And they're fighting all the leather clad looking whatever. That scene in particular this time around felt too much of a copy of the lobby scene from the first movie, but not as good. Even though the like leather clad dudes are defying gravity and being on the ceiling and things like that. I actually laughed at one part because one of the guys runs out of bullets and just starts doing backflips and then gets blown away. I'm like, well, maybe if you weren't just trying to backflip across the room in the middle of a gunfight, you would have survived. Yeah. But so that scene I could have done without, but I understand they were like, it's a roadblock to get to the Merovingian and all that stuff. But that felt like it was dragging out a little bit to me. I actually really like the scene between Neo and the program talking about love. Although, again, I was a little confused because I thought they were trying to get his daughter out of the Matrix, but she goes to stay with the Oracle, who is in the Matrix. So is she? I was confused about that. Did I get that wrong?
So they have to go out. Their daughter can't come with them. She has to stay.
They are leaving the Matrix.
Yeah, they are leaving the Matrix. She can't come with them.
I got you. I think I had it backwards. I thought they were trying to get her out of the Matrix.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, then why is she with the Oracle? But it was them they were trying to get out. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I like that scene with him. I'm kind of a dialogue fan. One of the things I really like about these movies, which I think some people don't like, is the world building. I really love the amount of thought. Yeah, the thought and attention, and the detail that the Wachowskis put into these films, I think is incredible. And so I really like that a lot. But yeah, now that you mention it, the first act does take a little bit to get kind of moving. And once the dock battle starts, that's like it's kicked into high gear for the rest of the film pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. Before we get to that train conversation, I want to go a little bit further back. So they fight the people in the lobby, the BDSM bunch.
Right, yeah.
And then they have to get to Merv, the Merovingian. Neo is stuck in limbo, which I believe to be, if I had to equate it to something in the real world, Neo is inside a computer that is not connected to a network.
Okay.
So when they plug themselves into the Matrix, they are entering that network. And without that network, he's still plugged in somehow. But like I said, he's not in the actual Matrix. So we know that he's stuck between the real world and the Matrix, but there is nothing to connect him to the network of the Matrix.
Right. Unless he gets on the train.
Right.
The train is like the network connection.
Right. Right.
Does the movie explain how he got there? Like, I understand. So the way that I had to pop in Reloaded to watch the very end of Reloaded because I couldn't remember exactly how Reloaded ended. And they're on the Nebuchadnezzar, right? And they realize the Sentinels are throwing a bomb, actually. And so they're like, we got to go. They get off. And then Neo's like, I can feel them. And he stops them in the real world, but then passes out. And then this movie starts and he's still passed out or in a coma or whatever, but his mind is now in that unnetworked place. But it doesn't really say how he got there, unless there was some connection between him and the Sentinels when he tried to stop him, and that's how his mind ended up there or something. It didn't.
That is one of the
quite
things
explain it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that they don't explain in this movie, and it does bother me. Yeah. But I guess I can forgive it, but it still kind of bothers me. And the other thing that they don't explain, which I'm going to get to in a moment. So Neo is stuck in limbo. Mobile Avenue is what it is. It's called Mobile Avenue, and they have to meet the Merovingian because it's kind of his domain, because that is where programs are smuggled through that train station, and the train man is employed by the Merovingian because he is a trafficker of sorts. And the train station, the train itself and the train station is the train man's dominion, and he's not gonna let Neo on because he hasn't gotten word from the Merovingian. And the Merovingian is telling Morpheus, Trinity, and Seraph, like, I'll let him go if you bring me the eyes of the Oracle. I'm still not sure what exactly that means. It's another thing that bothers me about this movie. It's another question that is not quite answered. So they have this Mexican standoff, which is pretty cool. But they finally get to the Oracle, and she's different because in the real world, in our world, Gloria Foster passed away right after she shot her scenes for Reloaded. So she I don't even think she got to shoot her scenes for any of her scenes for Revolution, if I'm mistaken.
Right.
And they replaced her with Mary Alice, and they walk in, they looking like, yo, like, what's going on? Like, who are you? Mm-hmm. And she says something very like vague and ambiguous. I made a choice, and that choice cost me more than what I would have liked it to. But it's insinuated that she has done this before. So I'm thinking that her appearance changes with each iteration of the Matrix, either right before or right after, because she says, that choice cost me more than what I wanted it to, but she says, here I am at it again. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Right. So I would assume, even if it's not her appearance, I would assume that with each iteration of the Matrix, she has to sacrifice something of herself.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. We know, obviously, in the real world that it was not, there was they obviously wanted the original Oracle, and they had to kind of change things at the last minute. I was curious about because I'm fairly certain they shot these movies back to back because they came out 6 months apart.
Yes.
And so I was, I would be curious to know the shooting schedule, because typically if you've got an actress, you would want to get all of her scenes done. But I don't know if maybe they wanted to shoot all of Reloaded first and then shoot all of Revolutions. I could see how it could get super confusing to shoot two movies at one time. And so I was curious if they had maybe started shooting her scenes for Revolutions and then she passed away and they had to redo those scenes, or if they had never gotten to them. And so you might be right. They maybe never even got to him. She passed away in 2001 and Reloaded came out in 2003. So they had started shooting the movie early,
Yeah. They went,
again, they were doing two movies.
Production. So. Yeah. They went into production on this movie, on these two movies right after the first one came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because
they knew they had a hit on their hands.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but so the story is they had originally written this to be one story, and they had always intended on telling that complete story. And I think Joel Silver was like, guys, you can't tell this big story in one movie. I don't know if they intended on doing it in one movie, or if they had always intended on splitting it up into a trilogy. I don't think they intended on doing a trilogy. I don't think they intended on telling it in one movie, but I do think that they thought that Warner Brothers was just going to give them a trilogy, and Joseph was like, no,
Right.
you got to make the first movie work first before
Right.
before you can start talking about the trilogy. So just focus on this one story. And they had been working on that one movie since 1996. So that one movie took 3 years to make.
Right.
And then right after that movie came out, then they went on Reloaded and Revolutions, and those movies took like 2 years to make because like we said, they was doing them back to back. I would like to assume that they did the one movie first. They did Reloaded first, and then I keep wanting to say Resurrections.
Right.
It gets confusing after a few movies with R, but yeah,
right.
and then Revolution. So I think because like I said, I don't think that she shot any of her scenes for Revolutions. Because they actually had another tragic death. Aaliyah was supposed to be in Reloaded and Revolutions. She was supposed to play the character of Z, Link's wife.
Okay.
Yeah. She's played. They had to replace her with Nona Gay. Because I thought for a long time I thought she was supposed to be Niobe, but no, she was actually supposed to be Z.
I gotcha. Niobe was the first one that came to mind when you said Aaliyah, or you said Aaliyah was originally cast. I thought, I wonder if she was Niobe, but Z also makes sense, I suppose.
It would have been weird for her to be Niobe for me, because I just don't see her and Lawrence Fishburne having any kind of chemistry at all. Even her and like I just don't see her and like Commander Locke being a couple. Like that would be weird for me.
Right.
What part are we on again? Oh, they met the Oracle.
Saving Neo.
Yeah, saving Neo. So, they finally get to Neo after this. It looks kind of goofy, the train chase. It's supposed to be a chase and they're supposed to be sprinting, but the train man is jogging, but it looks weird because you could tell he's supposed to be running fast, but he's not really running that fast.
Right.
So it's always looked really goofy to me, that whole train scene, because in the wide shots, Seraph and Trinity and Morpheus, they're all sprinting, and then you get to this close up shot of the train man, and he's like doing this, but he's barely going anywhere.
Right. I like who they cast as the train man. I forget his name, but he was also in like Mad Max or The Road Warrior. He just has a really interesting face, and he's one of those guys that when you see him, you remember him. Train man, Bruce Spence. Yeah. New Zealand actor. He was in The Road Warrior. He was in Lord of the Rings. I thought he was in Lord of the Rings. I thought Dark City. We talked about that. Well, I don't know if that might have been with John, but
yeah, I was not.
And he was also apparently in Revenge of the Sith, which I don't remember. But
I remember him as being one of the poachers from Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I forgot about that. And so yeah, he's one of those guys where when he pops up in another movie, you're like Train Man or whatever you know him from, So
yeah,
guy from Road Warrior, guy from Ace Ventura.
That conversation that Neo has with the program and the train station, that kind of encompasses like what the Matrix is about. That's why I like the scene, and it's a very important scene, and it needs to be in the movie. I just don't like the placement of it because it's such a slow scene. But
right,
they have that conversation about love. The program. What is the name of that program?
I remember his wife's name was Kamala, and his daughter's name was like Safi or Sati, or something like that.
Yeah, I just don't remember his name.
But I forget what his name is.
It's weird.
Is it not Ramachandra?
Oh, there it is. So yeah, when Neo's talking to Ramachandra, they're talking about love, and Ramachandra's making the argument that love is just a word. What matters is the connection that the word implies. And that is literally the Matrix. Because the Matrix is the most accurate representation of Plato's allegory of the cave. where these slaves are chained to a wall in a cave, and above them is a light, and it's shining a light on a wall. You see these shadows of objects on the wall, and to them that is reality. But one of them magically gets freed, goes out of the cave, and like actually sees the real world. And the shadows to them are reality, but what they really represent are ideals. And that's kind of what the program is saying, is that love is just a word that represents a connection. And that is what the Matrix is all about, specifically Neo and Trinity. Neo could not be the one without Trinity. He needs Trinity's love to be the one. That's why in the first Matrix, when he died, well, he actually did die in the at the end of the movie, after Smith shot him. He doesn't come back to life. He's not resurrected until Trinity professes her love for him, and that is what ultimately takes him over the edge to be the one. Now he could do all that stuff he did before because he chose to, and he knew like the stakes that were at hand because he had to save Morpheus. But what matters is the connection that him and Trinity have. So that's one thing that I really love about that conversation, is that if you're like I said, if you really paying attention and you go back and watch all these movies in retrospect, it sums up the entire trilogy in that one conversation.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So now that we got the boring stuff out of the way, right. Let's talk about the awesome stuff.
Let's get to the
you mentioned earlier that you didn't like the mech suits, or you didn't like them quite as much as you did before. I never really had a problem with them.
Well, I didn't really ever have a problem with them either until this viewing. It's just something about them watching it this time just didn't work as much for me. I'll tell you the one shot that I kind of actively dislike is right before, they see the dust kind of falling from the dock, and they all raise their weapons and they're pointing guns like sideways. It's just kind of like that. I don't know. It's just something about it that I just was like, you couldn't have it up at, like, I don't know. But I can see, I don't know why I feel this way because I don't watch anime really, but I feel like it definitely, and these movies are kind of anime influenced, I think. But I just felt it the most with these mech suit scenes. I don't know this time around, but I don't dislike it. I just didn't connect with it as much as I had in the past, I guess. Because I remember the first time I saw it, I thought it was awesome. But I don't know, maybe this time around, I just didn't quite like it as much. I do like the guy that plays Captain Mifune. I think he's pretty good. He's got the tough guy, general kind of thing down. And I like, it's not developed a whole lot, but it also doesn't need to be. But I like his little storyline with him and the kid, whose name I don't remember.
Kid.
It was just Kid? Okay.
Yes, Kid.
I like how, when they first run into each other, the Kid is kind of out of his element, out of his depth. And, the general's even telling him, he's like, you're too young. You can't be here, And Kid says that, when the machines come, they're not going to care if I'm 18 or not. Yeah. And he's like, well, that's true. And so he lets him do it. And they ended up, he's the one that, Kid is the one that ends up helping reload General or Captain Mifune's guns. And then when Captain Mifune is taken out, he's like, you have to do it, Kid. So I liked all that. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it gave the kid something to do, although, so, all right, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here because Neo helps basically create a bit of a truce between the machines and the humans. And the Sentinels all leave, and they don't know what Neo has done. But they believe that Neo has saved them. And Kid just goes running out to yell at everybody, the war is over. And I'm like, you don't know that for sure.
Oh man, that's funny. Well,
but everybody reacts like, yeah. But I was just like, what if they all like came back right at that moment? They're like, but you said the war was over.
Well, the thing is, before that happens, the machines stop. They don't just up and leave. They are about to attack the inhabitants of Zion because they're all in a cave, safe from the dock.
Right.
For the time being, they're safe. And when they overtake the dock and Neo finally reaches the machine city and he's talking to the Deus Ex Machina, like the machine god, and when that conversation begins, that's when the Sentinels stop.
Machines stop. Right.
Yeah, and Morpheus is like, hold on, something's going on here. I think Neo is fighting for us right now. So let's chill out, because he puts his gun down and Niobe looks at him like, what are you doing?
Right, yeah.
He's like, Neo fights for us. Let's see how this plays out. So it does make sense that when they leave, Kid would automatically think that the war is over, because it's not like they're about to attack and then they just up and leave. They sit for a bit and wait. Like the machines and the humans are waiting to see what happens. But getting back to the dock scene, this scene is so awesome. Even though this is the movie that I like the least. I still like the movie, but this scene will never not be awesome. I love the mech suits. I think the reason the way they look the way they do is because they are purely for function and nothing else. So they're not supposed to look cool, which in turn to me still makes them look cool. The only thing that I don't like about them is that the operator has no protection whatsoever. He is fully exposed. And I'm like, if he gets a headshot, it's all over.
Right.
So that's the only thing that bothered me about it.
Yeah, it's basically what happens to Captain Mifune is that the Sentinels like rush him and he gets shredded.
Yeah, literally shredded.
And he, but the mech suit is still operational. So yeah, if there was some protection for the pilot or the operator, then those things would be even more unstoppable, so
yeah. And I'm like because why didn't they give the operators helmets? Because all of the troopers who are not in the mech suits, they have helmets.
That's true.
Why don't the operators of the mech suits, who are literally on the front line, have helmets?
It's a great question. Maybe they don't have that many helmets, because Kid doesn't have a helmet when he's running out there to reload. Yeah,
no protection whatsoever.
None. Yeah, I was gonna say, when Captain Mifune first gets in his mech suit, he like hops up there and then turns the thing on, and it's like it rocks him back and forth and everything, and I'm like, that thing needs seatbelts. And it does end up, you do see later, he does have like shoulder straps on, but when he first gets in there, he doesn't put anything on. And he powers that thing up, and I was like, I would fall right out of that thing. I thought at first, because then when he gives his speech, which this in my opinion is kind of one of the examples I talked about in a previous episode, whatever movie we were talking about, where the inspirational speech there's not quite enough there, in my opinion, to make everybody in the movie go, yeah, which they do in this. During that speech, he does not have the shoulder straps on, but then it shows all the other mech users and they do. So then I thought, oh, well, he's just too good to have his, his shoulder straps. But then once they get into the actual, like they're getting to their positions at the dock, he has them on at that point. So I was like, okay, never mind. Yeah. But yeah, just a little thing I don't think I ever really noticed before, but yeah, I was like, he's not. I
never noticed that. Another thing I like about that scene is how the Sentinels get into the dock. They have these big giant drills that are drilling into the city, and they like fall from the ceiling down into the dock, and then that's how they like you hear the buzz. You hear the buzz and the humming of the Sentinels coming, and you're just waiting. I thought it was awesome, and they just swarm in, and then there's one big swarm that's like in the form of a hand, that just looks
Right.
awesome, and then it like kind of balls up into a fist and just rushes forward. Oh, it was so awesome. And then while all of that is going on, you got Niobe driving the Logos because she had to give or no, she's not driving the Logos. She's driving the hammer because she gave the Logos.
And Neo has the Logos. Yeah.
Yeah. She gave the Logos of Neo and Trinity so they could get to the Machine City, and she is driving the hell out of this thing. Like, what is his name? The captain of the hammer. And I love that. I love that scene too when she gives Neo the Logos because Neo was saying, I'm gonna have to take one of these ships, and the captain was like, I'm not about to let you do that. Are you crazy? And Niobe was like, you could take mine. He was like, you can't do that. He's like, don't, like, after that speech you just gave, you're not about to sit up here and tell me what to do with my ship, bro.
Yeah, I like that too.
And then she pretty much commandeers his ship. She said, I'll drive this one, you shoot. And she does not disappoint. Like, she is maneuvering this thing in ways that he didn't even know the hovercraft could even do.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the best part is when he goes, they cut to him and he goes, "Oh, I didn't even know this ship could do that."
Yeah. And and the thing is, she's not driving it through their lines. She's driving it through mechanical lines. She's driving it through the lines that the Sentinels go through. So it's very tight and very narrow because they're not built for ships. And she is bobbing and weaving and twisting and turning, and she is really driving that ship. I love that scene, and I love how it intercuts between the Battle of the Dock, them going through the mechanical lines, and Neo and Trinity approaching the Machine City. And this is where Trinity like dies for real this time, because she's outside of the Matrix, so ain't no coming back from that. Even though Neo has these new powers where he can see, I wouldn't necessarily say the code, but he can see the essence of the real world. Everything looks like it's made of light, which I thought was cool. Because before that, Agent Smith has come back in Bane's body, and they fight, and he blinds Neo, but Neo can still see. Right. Which is
and he sees cool. Agent Smith, which I love those shots.
It was so cool.
Going back to Niobe real quick, I was going to also point out that one of the things I love about that scene is Morpheus and Lawrence Fishburne's performance in those scenes, because Morpheus has always been our like stoic leader who has faith that this is, they're going to win because of Neo and blah, blah, blah. And he is stressed out in the scene where Niobe is flying. And I love seeing that because he's like, she's calling out commands, 90 degrees, blah, 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 starboard. And he's like,
you need to keep up.
He's like, and he's like, I'm trying. So I love that.
Oh, yeah. I like that too. Going back to Bane. So Niobe gives them the Logos. Bane has hidden in like the bottom of the Logos. He's holding Trinity hostage. Neo comes out, sees that, let her go, we can handle our business. He drops her down a chute. They fight. He blinds him, and the actor that plays Bane is doing such a wonderful job playing Agent Smith. I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. And he's not in the movie that long, but he makes such an impression.
Yes, that I was going to say the exact same thing. I was just looking up his name. Ian Bliss is the actor's name.
Oh, man.
Nailed it. He knew what the assignment was, and he nailed it. He plays, he does a Hugo Weaving impression, basically.
Yeah.
And it is really good. He nails Agent Smith. I thought it was so good.
Even in the scene before that, like in the beginning of the movie when they're interrogating Bane, like he is so like menacing in that scene, because it feels like an interrogation scene from like a crime, like a noir film, and it's just so good. He like you said, he understood the assignment and knocked it clear out of the park. He has one of my favorite performances in the entirety of the trilogy. If I'm not me, then who am I? Like, oh my god.
He's looking at those cuts on his arms like they appear to be self-inflicted. Why would I do that? Yeah.
Why would I do that to myself? Unless I wasn't myself.
Right.
Oh man. Oh man, he knocks it out of the park. But like I like that scene too when, you know, they're on the way to the Machine City. And they got these, they're not sentinels, but I don't know what they are. They look, I don't know. They look like mechanical shrimp.
Right.
Because they're on the edge of the city and they fire these shrimp machines at them, and they got to go up into the clouds. And when you finally see the sky, like the actual sky for the first time, it is beautiful. It is so colorful. And like Trinity is amazed, and then you go right back down into the Machine City, and that scene is so good because the music that plays when the ship descends back into the clouds into the city is so bombastic. I love the fanfare in that scene. Like, it is so epic.
Yeah, and it's quick too. Like if you're not paying attention, you might miss that shot of the clouds, and it's incredible, you know. And I love the kind of the juxtaposition of it. That beautiful sky is up there, you know, but the real world is down below the clouds, and it looks so creepy and scary down below it, you know.
Yeah. Now, have you seen the Animatrix?
No.
Okay, I don't know if we discussed this on Matrix Reloaded. If we have, forgive me, because I'm about to say it again, but I don't remember. But they do go into what happened with the sky. Like, you know how in the first movie, Morpheus says it was us that scorched the sky. They explain exactly how that happened.
Oh, cool.
When they realized, you know, the machines were powered by solar energy, it was like, we're just gonna cut them off for the sun. So they put these cloud machines, or these not machines, these planes into the sky that let out this perpetual black cloud that covered the entire planet. And that, you know, that's how the sky is like perpetually black. And I really wish we could have got to see a little bit more of the Machine City, because I love the idea of these machines looking nothing like humans at all.
Right.
Even the city just looks so otherworldly. There is no semblance of humanity whatsoever. And we don't see a whole lot of the Machine City. We see a skyline, and we see whatever tunnel Neo is walking through to get to the Machine God.
Right.
But I wish we could have seen just a little bit more of the Machine City, because the machines in this world are very animalistic. They look like insects, and they're kind of amphibious, and even the smaller machines that form the face of the Machine God, you know, they're very hive-like, and I thought that was like super interesting. And speaking of juxtapositions, I love the fact that this, like, we've been building up to this moment for Neo to see the God of the machines, and they form the face of a baby.
Yeah.
Like that, like I thought that was genius. Like, you take this terrifying being that we don't really know much about, but we just know that it is the machine consciousness that is, you know, that oversees the world of the machines, and to our knowledge, we think that it's going to be this terrifying thing, and they form this innocent, round, fat baby face. And I was like, that is genius to have. It's so unexpected, and it makes sense because, again, machines don't think like humans. They're not concerned about appearance. They're concerned about functionality. They just form that face so Neo could have something to talk to and identify with. They're not concerned with what the face actually looks like. They're not even concerned with scaring or intimidating Neo. This is just how they are. So just to have that big terrifying thing form the face of a baby, like I thought that was super anime. Like if anything was anime, right. it was that.
That was it. Yeah, and that's when Neo is kind of pleading with the machines and the machines at one point ask him, "What do you want?" And he says, "Peace." And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the bulk of the conversation happens off screen. The next time we see them, he's like about to get connected to the Matrix, and the machines ask him, "What if you fail?" I forget if he says "I won't" or
he says "I won't."
Yeah, he says "I won't." And so I might have to cut this part out, but I do have a question for you. Agent Smith is a product of the machines, but Agent Smith was taking over pretty much every program. He had taken over the Oracle everywhere. He was copying himself wherever he could. So he was essentially endangering the machines, right? Because he was copying and deleting stuff.
Agent Smith has become a virus.
Okay.
And he is infecting the Matrix. The machines need the Matrix to stay alive because it keeps the humans asleep in check so they can use their bioelectricity, the heat from their bioelectricity to live.
Power them. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So if Agent Smith takes over everyone in the Matrix, then the Matrix will destroy itself.
Right.
Leaving no minds to be freed. Also leaving no power for the machines. So he is a threat to both worlds. That's why they have the conversation like, Agent Smith is taking over. You need me. And the machines is like, we don't need you. We need nothing. And they go crazy. And then they start, and then they think about it for a minute. And they're like, all right, man, what you want? And he says, peace.
Right. All right. Hypothetically, let's say,
like hypothetically, if we were to work together, what would you need?
Right. And so that scene takes us into the final fight scene between Neo and Agent Smith, which I love. That is a
burly brawl,
superhero fight. Yes. That it reminded me, actually watching it last night. It reminded me a little bit of the Man of Steel fight. It was kind of a precursor to the Man of Steel Zod fight at the end of the movie.
Yeah. If I'm being honest, this fight is better. I love Man of Steel, and I think Man of Steel is a masterpiece of superhero cinema. But this fight is so well done. Like it has a perfect 3-act structure. Like it might even be 4 acts because they start in the street, they go into a building, then they go into the sky, then they go into a crater. It is wonderful. It's wonderful, and then it's everything a nerd could want from a 3rd act fight.
Yes,
it's dark. It's raining. It's mano a mano showdown. They're flying. They have super strength. Everything geeky nerd could want is in this fight, and I love it.
It was pretty much the sole reason I wanted to drive out and see it in the IMAX when I saw it 20 years ago, because I loved the fight scene in this movie. And I like too about, so Agent Smith had taken over the Oracle. And so when they're in the crater and Neo is at his lowest, I guess you could say, in this fight scene, Agent Smith is like, wait, I've seen this. You know, he's like, you were right there. And I say something like, and then the Oracle kind of takes over for a minute and says, repeats something that she had said to Neo earlier, which is everything that has a beginning has an end. And then Agent Smith comes back and he's like, wait, what did I say? And Neo realizes kind of what he has to do, which is basically sacrifice himself, because once he lets Agent Smith copy himself onto him, the machines would just kill Neo, and which would destroy the virus.
Yes. So the Oracle earlier in the movie says that they are two sides of an equation. Neo is there to balance it. Smith is there to unbalance it. So Neo dying essentially brings balance. You would think that it brings imbalance, but
right,
it brings balance because they cancel each other out. And that is how Smith is destroyed. I never really thought that the machines were killing Neo, but I guess that's what happened. I just thought that once Smith assimilated Neo, that they canceled each other out.
I guess I always got the, I mean, it's maybe it's not explicitly shown or anything, but we know from Bane that if Agent Smith kind of copies himself to a person, that he could also get out of the Matrix. And so I kind of assumed that when Neo let himself get copied, the machines kind of realized that the person that was hooked up right in front of them was no longer Neo, but it was now the virus, or had been infected by the virus. And so they destroyed it right there. Because it shows, if I'm not mistaken, it shows Neo kind of being, his body, like being attached to the cables and everything, is kind of being like
twitching. Yeah.
He's twitching and stuff. So I always assumed the machines were destroying Neo in that moment to also destroy the virus.
Yeah. But the only problem I have with it is that and this is probably just in my head, I never thought that there was just one, just like central bad Smith or whatever. I just thought that one of them just walked out and, you know, he was going to fight that Smith. So when when Smith assimilates Neo's body, I just assumed that he was just another Smith and not some like central core super evil bad Smith. I just assumed that once he was assimilated, he was literally just another Smith. But the difference is, it's a callback to the first movie when Smith went into, or not Smith, when Neo had finally become the one, Smith. Yeah, and went into Smith's body and blew him up. It like the opposite, or not the opposite, but the very same thing is kind of happening right now. It's just that instead of Neo going into Smith's body, Smith has assimilated Neo, and then that causes that equation to balance itself out because they're canceling each other out like two negatives.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I know that don't quite make sense, but it makes sense to me, so I'm gonna stick with it.
Sure. Okay. I feel like we could probably talk about this movie for quite a bit longer, but we're running long on time, so I think we should go ahead and get into our ratings. Okay. What would you rate The Matrix Revolutions?
As much as I like this movie, it's still, in my opinion, the weaker of the trilogy. I do want to say this before we get to Matrix Resurrections later on down the road. I consider this trilogy one complete story, and Matrix Resurrections is its own thing.
Right.
Yeah. That's no indications on my feelings about Matrix Resurrections, but that'll be further explained when we get to that movie. But I do think that this is its own thing. And the reputation that the sequel movies have, I understand why people can't get with them, because like I said, that second movie is very talky despite having a lot of action. There are some places where you got to get through a lot of conversation. The Oracle in the park or the apartment complex, the Merovingian in the restaurant, and the architect at the end of the movie. at the source. Those are very talky scenes, and I get why that would turn people off, and it's a lot of exposition. But I think if you really pay attention to what is being said in Reloaded and the first movie and the second movie, and then take that into Revolutions, I think you can appreciate the trilogy way more, because first movie had a lot going for it. It had a lot of philosophical themes, but it was just enough fun stuff that it didn't overload people's brains. And Reloaded specifically, not so much Revolutions, but Reloaded is information overload. And so Revolutions tries to get back to the fun stuff. But the thing about Reloaded is that people were already turned off by the information overload. So by the time Revolutions came, people didn't really care anymore. So I get that from like a general audience perspective. But if you are one of the people who does not like these sequel movies, I urge you to go back and rewatch them through another perspective. Really sit down and pay attention to what is being said. I really think that you would enjoy watching this trilogy. That being said, I know I went over the river and through the woods to get to that point, but that being said, this movie has some questions that aren't answered, even though it answers it closes a lot of loops and loose ends and stuff. It still raises a couple of questions that go unanswered. I still love this movie, and I'm still gonna watch it numerous times, but I'm gonna have to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I don't know, Nebuchadnezzar's. It's not a perfect end to this trilogy, but it's a solid end. I just think that, those questions that it raised really need to be answered. As far as, the Oracle, what happened to Neo at the end, like it's assumed that he died, but we don't know that 100% for sure. We just have to make that assumption because he was assimilated and blew up in the Matrix. So, but he's the one, so who knows?
Right. Yeah. You never know. That's a good point. I always assumed he died, but you're right. Maybe we don't know for sure. I pretty much agree with all your points. I probably like this movie just a tiny bit less than you. And so for me, I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 Sentinel drills. But I did think while I was watching this that I really want to sit down and actually watch either the whole trilogy back to back or at least Reloaded and Revolutions back to back, which I think might make me appreciate this movie a little bit more if I watch it right after Reloaded, because it really is one movie.
Yeah.
Just broken up into 2 parts. So
yeah,
it's kind of like Dune, So I do think that I agree with you. It's not a perfect ending necessarily, but it is a good ending, and it's not a bad movie. I do think the sequels get a bad rap, and I don't think that they deserve it as much as they get.
They're not easily digestible movies, and like I said, I totally get why people are turned off by it. I just don't like when people say that they suck. Like, they don't suck. It's just
they don't suck. Yeah,
it's just a lot of information to take in, and you have to be mentally prepared for it. That's the best way that I can put it.
Right. Exactly. Well, we'd love to know what you think about The Matrix Revolutions. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can comment on our Instagram posts at cinemaheroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment down below, give the video a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I think that about wraps it up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.